All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Meow, meow. Um, I want to lay out I need to figure out first off how to set up community guidelines in my YouTube channel. I asked Jacob Federici a while ago and he told me, and I haven't figured it out. What up, Cody? Um, and, but what I would like to lay out this morning and say is, I'm not I'm not sure of the direct balance, but as TLC has increasingly had political and culture war conversations, um, I'm probably gonna exercise more administrative control over my channel because I don't. It is, and it's related to this topic, and that's something that we can talk about. Is what do you do when someone just doesn't get on board? When somebody just doesn't get with the program, which is a telling way of saying it, right? When somebody doesn't follow the script, what do you do when people go off script? When people don't meet hey, oh, currently live streaming, dog. Just letting you know. Um, so uh it's It's actually interesting because it's related to something that I put on my channel. I posted on my channel a video of some cat. I actually haven't finished it yet, but it was very good. Even his first 2-minute summary was very good. But what is the title of it? It's like a narrative. It's related. Let me look it up. Yeah, non-narrative thinking is, well, he said, is literally changing my life. Is that a correct usage of literally? I mean, it's probably part of it. Yeah. All right, just a sec. All right, we're back. And so it is, man, it's so, but that's related to scripts, right? Programs. We talked, that came up at some point in, so in the same way that I would say this is like a cognitive science thing, and Jordan Peterson has talked about it, but in the same way, this is part of what embodied knowledge is, and it's related to Polanyi and subsidiary focal integration, how the mind works. You focus on something is salient to you, it shines forth, you pay attention to it. How exactly salience works and relevance realization, the Vervaeke terms, those are, why do you pay attention to the things that you pay attention to? I would say ultimately is rooted in your hierarchies of love, or its counterpart, because Christ and Antichrist. And so I would say fear, what you love and what you fear. It's almost like what you fear is the shadow of what you love, or something like that. And so, but those are things you pay attention to. And one thing for sure that we should have learned by now, if you're paying attention, in my opinion, of the internet and of algorithms and of social media, is that we are in an attention economy. Attention, people spend a lot of money to get your attention and to hold your attention. And part of that is because attention equals dollars, dollar bills, y'all. I don't know if that's a joke or not, but I was giving Chad crap about having to listen because Chad doesn't want to be on Signal with me, and so Chad, because he's trying, whatever. It's your divine right, Chad. Your kingly right, you royal man. I'm a big fan of Signal though, because you can speed up audios. It's efficient, and voice memos are the way to go. Anyhow, and so what you pay attention to. And Mark said pay attention. The problem is that I don't know that attention. I think your attention, to some degree, depending on how what is the relationship with your attention and your will, right? To some degree, that's true. There's a Simone Weil article on education that I think is very good, where she talks about that's what education is learning how to pay attention. It's the discipline of paying attention, and particularly maybe paying attention to things that you don't want to pay attention to. Because in that, once you learn how to pay attention, you can direct your attention in certain ways. And it's probably, I mean, it probably is in some sense related to self-control, so that you're not tossed to and fro by every wave of doctrine or by your emotions. It's part of emotional regulation, learning how to pay attention and what to pay attention to. Because when you become, and it's part of awareness and even meditation, mindfulness, because when you pay attention to something, when you're able to pay attention to something, then you can exert your will on whatever you're paying attention to. And it gives you greater, probably, agency in your life. So all of that to say, so we have these scripts, we have these different narratives that we tell ourselves. For instance, I mean, and this came up with Nathan Ormond, my last thing, and Nathan comes on my channel occasionally. He's a frequenter on House of Woo, has a long storied history in the TLC, and we pay attention to what we hold as highest in the moment. Attention equals worship. Yeah, to some degree, I think that's true. He came on, and Nathan, for example, thinks that people should pay more attention to politics. And I don't. And, and so then, here you go. He could be right. I could be right. Who knows? Maybe it's not even a matter of being right. But what do you do when someone doesn't get on board with the program? So I think people should pay less attention to politics. Someone thinks they should pay more attention. Okay, when you two are in some sort of a body, in some sort of a relation to each other, when you have unavoidable relations to someone, well, and that's another question, chosen and unchosen relationships, to what degree online here, and especially in a live stream or something, I don't have necessarily unavoidable relations with someone unless I choose to, because I can just, I can go in, I don't even have to add the link. I don't have to look at the chat. If someone comes in, I could just boot them. You can do all those sorts of things, but I don't. As I have said, this probably gets at my question of bodies and exclusion and giving someone to God or anathematizing them. When do you divorce from someone? And I suppose that my prescription for thinking of divorce, giving someone to God, is when you realize that you do have a fundamental disagreement to such a point that whatever is you are unequally yoked. You're pulling in different directions. And so, like, you can't have two oxen that have a yoke, across them. Like, do we know what a yoke is? I'm not talking about an egg yolk. Okay. Although when you Google search for yoke, that's all that shows up. Yoke, oxen. Here, let's go. Here's a picture of some oxen that are yoked up. Just show me the picture, okay? You fools. Share screen. Here we go. Oh, no, I didn't do it, did I? Clicked on the wrong thing. New York oxen. Share. This is a yoke. These are oxen that are yoked. But see this? Like, when these two are turned the same way. They're looking different ways, but they have to pull together, right? They're toward one common goal, one telos, one mission, one purpose. They're equally yoked. If these two oxen pull away from each other, they can't. The vectors are wrong, right? They're not. It's not going to work. They can't go like this and try to pull something behind them. It won't work. Either they will exhaust themselves and fall down. They'll break the yoke. They won't move. It won't work. And so at some point, if these two oxen just refuse to pull in the same direction, or they don't want to, you have to separate them. It won't work. They have to divide. So how loud is that when the sink runs? Tell me. Is it like just very loud? I'm just asking. I want to know. I need information. And that's what I would say. So like, what do you do when someone just won't get on board? You want to pull this way, they want to pull this way. At some point, one or the other has to give. You or I or both must go. To quote, at least, I think that's in Shakespeare, because I think Baz Luhrmann, the great Romeo and Juliet by Baz Luhrmann with Claire Danes and Leo DiCaprio, because I often feel that way. Okay, nobody heard a sink. Perfect. The sink was running. You or I or both must go. Let's watch it. Can we watch it? You or I or both must go. I think this is, the best scene in Romeo and Juliet. Will I get like tagged for this? Maybe I won't. Anyhow, you know what I'm talking about. Romeo, it's after Tybalt has killed Mercutio, and Romeo is going after him to avenge his friend's death. and in at least the Romeo and Juliet, the Baz Luhrmann one, I think I would say this. It is one of, I might put it in the best. That's a great scene. Great song. It's on my playlist. Kissing You, Desiree. But I'm not talking about that scene. I'm talking about the scene where he goes after Tybalt and they're in the middle of that plaza. There's the fountain. They have swords, guns, and Tybalt stumbles, drops his gun. Romeo grabs it and before that, he's saying, or Tybalt has the gun to Romeo's head, and Leo, I think it's the best acting. I think true that is. He's not my favorite actor. He's very good. But it is, I'm distracted. But it is very excellent acting. And he's saying, you or I or both must go, and just screaming and crying, you or I or both must go, with him. And so that's what he's saying. He's like, either you need to die, or I need to die, or both of us need to die. This is irresolvable. We fundamentally disagree. We have to divorce or murder. And I think that is true. You either learn to love, to reconcile, to forgive, to work together. This is related to Jordan Peterson's slave, tyrant, or work it out. He's like, what do you do when you disagree with someone? Well, one either becomes a slave, and either like a manipulated slave or an overpowered slave in a slave tyrant dynamic, or a voluntary slave, submission. You say like, okay, I will not insist on my own way. You either do that, or you force the other person or coerce them violently or manipulatively, or you relationally work it out. And I like the term, lately I've been talking about relational optimal grip. But what happens when that won't happen for whatever reason? And I'm not casting judgment. I'm not saying, well, it won't work because this person's wrong, or it won't work because this person's wrong. Because that's also a game I don't want to play, is like the who's wrong game. Because, the Rumi quote that my boy Rod Hare likes to informed me of, but like, beyond the ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there's a field, I'll meet you there. To me, that's the field of forgiveness. It's the field of reconciliation. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not a time for people to separate. And maybe And maybe that happens violently, there's a season for everything. I don't know. I'm not prescribing it, but like that happens. People obviously there's there are separations that happen. There are murders that happen. There's divorce that happens. And ultimately, maybe those things need to happen for us to learn how to become one who forgives, which I think is what salvation is about. But what do you do? So like practically for me, what do I do when I have a stream and I open it up and I let people in and they insist on debating me about the merits of changing the world via politics, and they say you should care more about politics, and I say I don't agree with you, and I don't want to, and I don't want to continue having this conversation. Well, either Nathan would have to say, okay, I respect that. I respect your explicit boundary that you've put out there, and I won't go there anymore. Or he just has to take his ball and go home. Or if he won't do that, then I either have to let him overpower me in a way and just keep talking and demand on his own way and force it, or I have to systematically and using this technology mute him or boot him from the channel or block him or something. I don't want to do any of that. But what I will say is like I don't unless I choose to, and unless I feel like it's a fruitful, healthy conversation that is ultimately rooted in trust, because there's certain people I probably will talk politics about, but like I do not know Nathan enough, and I'm just using him as an example. In a lot, there's other people I could name. There are other people who are corner and corner adjacent, who because I think politics is such a hot button issue that is full of idolatry often. I don't want to have those conversations with people. I mean, Jacob would probably be one of those people. I don't think Jacob wants to have conversations with politics about me either. But people who are the more political people in the corner? My boy Lance. Lance I haven't engaged with in a long time. And I think Lance and I trust Lance enough where I think we could have a fruitful conversation about politics. At the end of the day, I think we probably disagree about its importance, or maybe not, or how much attention we should be paying to it. We probably definitely disagree about that, at least from what I know that Lance is paying attention to. But there's a lot of people, like I don't want to talk about politics really with my father. I will sometimes if he insists on it, and I'll go there, but I don't like it. It's an exercise in, I take it as an exercise in self-control for myself and in long suffering, and not insisting on my own way and not demanding to not do that. Because like if he brings it up or something, and I don't know, I probably have a good enough relationship with my dad where I could just be like, I don't want to talk about politics right now. And I don't think I need to always dictate where the conversation goes. I do in my monologues, and then if I open this up and other people come in, it becomes a little bit more fluid. But then at the end of the day, it's still, it's still my stream. Like sometimes streams go off the rails, and I think they get into a place that I don't prefer, that I think is unhealthy, and sometimes it's gone there. And to what degree should I regulate that and control it? I don't know. So I think that's a lot of what I have to say about it. So I'm going to open it up for people that want to chat, and pin it to the thing. Where are we at? And look at comments until other people come in, and keep talking, because listen, I know how to talk. Okay, here we go. Muting myself for a second. Okay, I'm back. Pinning the message. All right, let's see what people have to say. Al says, what we pay attention to matters. This is perspectival, the relational place, what meaning is born, care and attention. Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know who would disagree with that. Like what we pay attention to doesn't matter. But I think it's kind of like in church when people say pay attention to people's pocketbook. That will tell them what they value, what they worship, how they spend their money. Okay, yeah. Also, how you spend your attention is what you value, right? Whether consciously or unconsciously. If you're paying attention to this stream, you value it to some degree. Otherwise, you wouldn't be paying attention to it. This is kind of like and I think we all have hierarchies of value, but like I don't, and to some degree, value is related to love. If you value something, you think it's valuable. And there, and so, yeah, a hat he can wear with his family on air. Listen, all right, people. Yeah, this is important. Okay, family, like whatever you're doing, not important. This is important. Pick and choose says what people spend attention, energy, money on doesn't always reflect their values as much as their understanding of their options. I'm not sure I know what you mean. I mean, yeah, there are options, but very often though, your options somewhat can be limited by what you're paying attention to. I often think that, like, I often think that there are so many more, like even politically, even when you talk about like a city politics or a family, to make it simple, even a family, like the options that are available for a family, very often the problems that we have and our solutions and our fixing of things is very truncated, limited, because we don't have the kind of imagination to see the options that are available to us. Like that's part of creativity, right? I think where does Peterson talk about that well, like creativity? It's related somehow to IQ, but like highly creative people see a lot of options. They're like, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. And then they almost can struggle with analysis paralysis because they see so many options available to them. Whereas in a lot of way, like somewhat pejoratively, but I call ditch diggers, sometimes very simple people, and simple isn't necessarily bad. Simple, like even in Hebrew, I think Rob Bell has a great podcast from years ago I listened to on this, is it on The Sacred and the Simple or something? But simple means, I think this came up in some TLC conversation recently too. Like, what is the Hebrew word? Any of my Jewish hombres or mujeres, I don't know, available? Where have all the Jewish women gone? Where have all the Jewish women gone? If you think about that song too, that's not Meredith Brooks. Who sang Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? But simple is almost like, I think in Hebrew almost means like integrated at one. Like God is simple, in a sense, even in classic theism. So, but anyhow, like if you are somewhat simple, you don't, and in a sense, that's almost like holiness. That's a little bit of this quote of Loris that I love, where Loris, at the end of the book, Loris, which is fantastic. He's looking back on his life and he realized there was only one path. And that's because he became holy, where he became simple in the sense that, what's up, Scott? Hey, buddy. Loris became simple in that the option was to do God's will in his particular life and his embodiment. He wanted to do God's will. Well, what is God's will in a moment? It's the holy choice. It's the right choice. And that gets into the very much more complicated debate that I still don't know between like human will and whether or not we have libertarian freedom and gnomic will. But anyhow, Scott, what do you think about this stuff?
I'm finding it interesting how it's kind of circling back. I mean, that was kind of the topic of your videos, was like Christian nationalism. What do we do about it? Do we cut it off? That was Mark's kind of thing. We got to cut off our right arm to kind of do this. And now here you are kind of struggling with it in, a little microcosm of that bigger question. It's kind of interesting how, because we've been paying attention to it, now the moment presents itself into how do you discern the right move. I did a little bit of looking up because I saw it, and I appreciate that post last night because it gave me an opportunity to kind of do a little bit of digging and playing myself.
Nice.
And I tend to be a lot more procedural when it comes to this because the thing that popped into my head was like Ecclesiastes 3, where there's a time for everything. And how do you discern that? And I've always been very much a procedural, analytical kind of person. So I want a process that helps me find the right kind of deal. So, and I was on one of those streams, so I found, it wasn't what I wanted to talk about either. He kept trying to bring it back to the kind of like, what do we do? But yeah, now here you are. I mean, do you have a leaning on which way you want to go? I mean,
well, at some point, I think that's the issue with being unequally yoked. Is there is no neutral place. Like if one person's like, I want to do this, and the other person's like, I want to do this, like that can't work. You can't keep going in that. Like either one has to relent, or the other, or you have to cleave. It's you can't. And that's a lot of the kind of more structuralist people in the corner a little bit. I mean, it's interesting, like even in the TLC in the corner, it's part of, I watched PVK on the Theology podcast the other day because he went on that.
I watched that too.
Yeah. Okay. And, or I listened to it, I guess, but he, this is why I've always liked this area and I've liked PVK, and it's part of the reason that I've always trusted him is that PVK is leading very in a way that I love, that I think people should lead. He is, he's not trying to control anything. He was talking about that with them, with all the conferences, the events, even with our flotilla of channels. PVK is not telling anybody what to do. He's basically saying, follow your bliss, do what you want to do, create a channel if you want to, don't if you don't want to, go on somebody else's channel if you don't want to. I mean, yeah, he's encouraging people to come out of the lurk, to participate, because but also he says, like, if you want to engage in the TLC, well, part of it is like you have to participate. That's what he was saying on the podcast. He's like, you either have to start leaving enough comments so that people see you and know you and recognize you and start engaging you. But or you have to break the fourth wall and come on screen, which is like the next level, like yourself coming on screen. Like, now I know who you are. You pop on screen. I'm like, oh yeah, Scott, a few times ago he came on, then you went on to, what other stream?
Mark D. Parker.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been on these twice.
Right. So you're around now, and I'm getting to know you. But then that is the thing, right? You start to recognize patterns in people. You start to see certain things that they do in certain situations, so like as I start engaging with you, the way that you watch someone interact with someone else, either who they disagree with or who they agree with, and I start noticing these things, and that leads to knowing as you are known, which is my whole personless knowing thing, and it ultimately leads to faith, to trust in a person. And if you continue, and that's what I would say, like of certain people, that I mentioned before, like who I don't want to talk about politics with, it's because in my observation of you or my direct experience with you, I don't trust the way that you show up for this conversation to be one where essentially, like, I think you're, to use one of my Lukeisms, open to the truth outside the truth you currently apprehend. I don't think that you have the kind of relational optimal grip to have a conversation craft like C. Bax is talking about in a way where we are both going to be pursuing the further up and further end of which neither of us fully can comprehend.
Yeah.
And if I don't think I can do that with you, I'm not going to spend my attention and time on it. And I don't know how you can begrudge me for that. Like, why would I? Chad, what up, buddy?
I'm thinking about off the like. Can you hear me? I can't tell if my.
Yeah, I can hear you. It's not super loud, but I can hear you.
Okay, so rather than relational optimal grip, I think I would use the term when is it appropriate to practice optimal release. And
Yeah,
I
well,
think
that's related. Yeah,
that's better. Yeah, I think because it's like, well, I guess, yeah. Well, when you're, yeah. Do I value our friendship more?
You're roboting, buddy.
On some.
I'm all by myself.
Sorry, Scott. I'm coming back. I had to.
Yeah.
I had to do some. I still have a slightly ill or convalescing child.
Oh no.
What does convalescing mean? It's just a word that I say to make people think I'm smart. Recovering from illness.
That sounded a little older than a child, though.
Well, I mean, listen, she's a very big girl. So yeah,
I just wanted to comment on that because I too, in transition periods, I often find myself struggling, and the imagery that I've had in the past is like, I see that things are changing or a change needs to happen. And the question becomes in my mind, because I maybe it comes from kind of the lack of confidence in my own abilities to actually make the decision to do something, or do I just kind of sit back and kind of let things play out and land where they did?
Yeah.
Right. And land where they land and just have faith that I will be able to see enough of the path forward to then be able to decide which way to go once the things happen. I feel like it's a sense of pride to maybe stoke the fire, to make the fire go hotter, to invoke the change. But it's also wrong for me not to notice it and to go on as though nothing is coming up.
No, yeah, totally. It's a little bit of a like to be or not to be, to act or not to act. Do I? And a lot of that is related to your temperament, your maturity, all those things. Because like, are you a more aggressive, assertive person? Are you more of a passive person? What's your tendency? Like, what is your self-knowledge? Because if you're a passive person, you should probably challenge yourself to be more assertive and act in situations you wouldn't normally act. Do you tend to be, the enabling kind of permissive lapdog in a relationship where you're just like, yeah, whatever you want, people pleasing? Well, you should maybe develop a little bit of a backbone and give up some more of your opinions. That doesn't mean you have to be a jerk, but then there are also the people that are very contrarian, very assertive, have super strong opinions, want to tell everybody else what to do, and you should probably be quiet a lot more. It's like it has to do with all those things are a challenge, and I struggle with them because I'm a weird mix. Like I have lots of thoughts, lots of opinions, lots of ideas of how people should act in the world, and I can tend to be kind of codependent. So like and people know that about me in the corner. Like even me putting boundaries on people and wanting to like mute people or say like we got to shut this down is very difficult for me. I'm very hesitant to do that.
It's against your openness. right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's against your ability to explore the things you don't know through the relationships. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get that totally.
Alan, what up, my friend?
Yeah. Now the thing that I wanted to add to this is just the idea of um, the idea of like you can only do that like that boundary of when you're where you're at the like at the place of can you optimally with someone else make progress or find some way in which both of you are benefiting. Like you only do that when you're very honest with yourself about where you are and what you're desiring. There's so many people who want to like, oh, well, like, I'm going to talk about politics and because that's what matters. And it's like, well, what are you doing? Like, what are you literally doing in that relationship? Like, what are you actually accomplishing when you're yelling, when two people who agree or two people who disagree just yell at each other about politics? It's like you're feeling like you're changing something, but you're just ultimately two
Mm,
people in the world just yelling at each other, accomplishing nothing. It's like, it's not, Barack Obama and Donald Trump aren't wiretapped into your conversation. They're like, oh, he's winning. Oh, he's, you're creating this feeling of importance, but you're not actually doing anything. And it makes me think of, like in comedy, like a lot of people will start just because that's like a background I have. A lot of people will start by thinking like, "Oh, I've seen famous comedians do this and that," and it's like, "Well, you can't do that because you're not a famous comedian. You can't just like get out on stage and be like, 'So you guys are excited to see me,' and then everyone will start applauding because like, yeah, when Bill Burr or Eddie Murphy or whoever gets out on stage and sort of like just makes some banter at the beginning of the show and people are already doing a standing ovation, like." If you're at an open mic in a basement of a bar for four drunk people, like, what, you think they're gonna get up and do a standing ovation for you because you're like, the lights down here are pretty bright, Like, so the thing the thing you realize when you're doing comedy for the first time is like, I need to realize like, okay, I don't have a connection to these people. They're random four drunk people. I need to be very honest with myself of like, I'm gonna submit myself to the room to like what's going on and I'm just gonna like try and make a connection by humbling myself rather than being like, you guys are a bad audience. You should be howling with laughter. It's like, well, you don't have the right to tell them to do that. Like you can
Yeah.
even have good jokes, but if you aren't creating a connection with them, like that doesn't matter. So if you really just say like to yourself, like, hey, like I know I have jokes, I know I could be funny, but these people, like, I need to submit to what they want and what they're desiring from me in some
Right.
ways, and we're going to create a relationship together. And then if it all goes well, like we'll have a good night, or even a good 5 minutes of comedy. But
Right.
that's takes a lot of humility, where a lot of people don't want to start from that. They just want to be like, I know that this is really funny because I'm basing all my jokes around my favorite comedian, Bill Burr. He's so funny. I'm gonna just rip off his act for 5 minutes, and everyone's gonna applaud me like they applaud Bill Burr. And it's like, no, dude, like you suck. You're not Bill Burr. This isn't like a giant stadium. No one's gonna applaud. So I know that's a little bit of a rant, but it's just like, yeah, like just see what you're actually doing and see what actual position you're in, and then you can actually start making real progress. Yelling at your grandfather that he has the wrong politics is not. He's not gonna be like, oh, thank you. I'm gonna vote the right way now. It's like this
Yeah.
is insane.
Right. And I'm a huge fan of. So what I was just as you were talking, would you have feedback somewhere? Can you guys hear an echo? Oh. So as you were talking, I mean, very often, Alan, not 100% of the time, but I often, we're friends. I trust you. I largely agree with you. And then I was thinking, because like even when Nathan, he reposted, I think my last live stream or whatever, one of them on his channel, and I read through the comments because I like to torture myself, and everyone was, just like, yeah, these guys are idiots. They don't understand what they're talking about. He's just like repeating Foucaultian like understandings of language and power dynamics and blah 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 blah. And I just think like I got the vibe so much, and I suppose that's inevitable, but it's like what we talk about of siloed or audience capture or whatever. One of the things that I like about the TLC, and there's lots of them. There's ones in here. I have very good friends who pretty consistently disagree with me, like Tayo was in here. I trust Tayo. Nick was in here. Phlebas was in here. Like, I love all these guys. They're great. And they disagree with me all the time. I want to be open. This is part of my problem, and this is what gets me stuck in my own analysis paralysis. And part of it is probably the openness that Scott was talking about, and creativity is like, this is the thing. It's like, I want to be open to what Nathan is saying and whatever he thinks I'm missing. Because that's what he says. He's like, I just don't understand him and I'm missing something. And I'm open to that, but I'm just like, I can't see what I don't see. And maybe it's because I'm doing some psychological repression where I don't want to see it, but like the bottom line is like, I just can't see it. You want me, what it seems like to me, and I think this is what you were talking about, is it's essentially like, it made me think of the PBK thing, that people are to be loved, not to be used. What it feels like when I talk to Nathan about politics is like, you just essentially want me to be a vote. Like, you want me to like put a rubber stamp on this thing or that thing. But then also the problem comes up with that is just like, what if I don't want to vote for the things you want me to vote for? Like, what if my politics aren't good? Like, what if I think, I should be a lot more politically evolved, but I have different opinions on policy that you have? Well, then what do you do? It's just like, I think a lot of this has to do with, if I'm just going to be honest, I think a lot of it has to do with degrees of mass formation and just the idea of keeping people engaged and clicked in because they're angry and upset. It's like rage baiting with the algorithm to keep people engaged, to capture their attention. And I don't even think it matters really what your opinion is on either side of the issue. Just keep you as part of the churn. That I think that's really the goal. And I'm like, and I don't want to do that. I said a lot of stuff.
Well, you can only see what you can see, right? Like, you can't, like, this idea that like, I'm going to force people to do what I want. And especially like, it's a very young man thing to like, oh, I learned a skill, I learned a tactic, I learned, how to beat my friends at chess, and then, or whatever, especially in social things. I learned how to do this. I learned how to get a date from a girl. And then you just go back to the well all the time and you think like, this is the truth and everyone should submit to this. And it's just like, that's not how it works, And so what is the actual, like, what are you actually getting out of the interaction? Rather than just beating people over the head and being like, well, you have to believe what I believe because I'm using this tactic, or I'm using reason, I'm using logic, I'm using social pressure, I'm using morality, I'm using religion, and you have to submit to that. It's like, well, clearly they don't, because they're not, and so like, what are you actually doing here?
Yeah, and it's and Scott, feel free to jump in if you have anything to say. But I fundamentally think too, that's where I've kind of always told Nathan from the beginning, like back to one of my earliest interactions with him when I first went on his channel and he was showing up a lot and creating creating, at least stirring the pot, whatever, creating conversation, whether positively or negatively. And I said, it's deep. Like, what's going on here is deeper than ideas. I said, it's deeper than ideas, man. It's really about people. And I think I'm actually excited. Here's a plug. I've talked to some people about this. I spoke with Cadell Last of Philosophy Portal yesterday, and we get into I think that, at least intellectually, it's kind of a randos of me, but then intellectually we get into a lot of this stuff, which is Peter Rollins' work, a lot of Peter Rollins' work, and I think that's the thing that's going on behind a lot of this stuff. Like, he even brought up, we were talking about the idea of jouissance, like that French philosophic idea that like there's a kind of pleasure that someone can get in in the other and in the debate and in arguing with someone, you get this weird kind of inverse pleasure out of it. And I don't know. I don't know what's going on with all that stuff.
You mind if I just want to, I don't think it's really, at least that's not my experience. I think it comes from the despair and the you know, that feeling that the end is nigh, that just, you know what I mean? Because I want to be generous to the, you know, and what would put me in that space is feeling that sense. Somebody said this, that feeling that if you just saw the things the way I saw them, you would be scared too, and you would obviously make this right decision, which is in that space. It's totally logical, right? To go there. So
yeah, it's essentially saying if you were me and you had all the exact constraints that I have on my life, and you were seeing all the exact same things that it's essentially saying, like, I see what I see.
Yeah,
that's essentially what you're saying.
But then making the move to choose despair. So that's where I think the thing happens, that then it kind of breaks, right? And then you're just trying to evangelize and based through that lens instead of, you know, all the other stuff.
Right. Mark, hello. Liver, also feel free to click the link and come in here, because I don't know if you're saying refusing to engage with ideas and facts can stem from. So, like, I'm actually not refusing to engage with ideas and facts. I'm presenting ideas and facts. I'm saying that I'm promoting and asserting the idea that I think human beings actually are oriented in faith and trust of people, because everything that we have is in the eye of the beholder. Truth is in the eye of the beholder. Which facts, which information, which ideas? You believe certain facts and certain ideas because you trust people. That's the idea that I'm putting forward. And you either believe me or you don't. But it's not because of the fact in and of itself. The fact in and of itself is dead. I still am hearing feedback. Are other people hearing feedback?
I think it's on Alan's end. When he's not muted, I don't hear it.
God, Alan, we keep him around because he's funny, but really, technologically and even intellectually, he's pretty mid.
Mid.
Okay, Mark.
Sorry,
one of the Marks.
Like, listen when you guys talk. So.
I'm frazzled. I don't know why I came on. I just like to look at myself.
Nice. Well, thank you, Mark. I shared. I want to say this. It's an aside from the conversation. We can get back to it. But you and your lovely wife, Irena, right? That was wonderful on Mark's stream yesterday. I listened into it. I have this big Georgian family that goes to my church that married a local girl from my church. And I shared it with the patriarch brother who lives here, but his family's all from Georgia and they're often over here. And so he's going to listen to it and get back to me. He probably won't. He's really Orthodox, so he probably won't like the part where Irena talks about not being super Orthodox. But anyhow, it was great. Thank
My
you.
wife's not
Yeah.
Orthodox. She's just not church.
Yeah.
I'm not church.
Yeah.
I think that's okay. But the rest of it, we're good with.
It's okay with some people. It's okay with me. You know, I mean, you gotta have grace a little bit for where people are. You know, I mean, that's a little bit of my friends Jason and Cal in here. But like, if you could be otherwise, I mean, this is the grace you have to give to yourself. It's the justice and mercy of God, right? Is that if you could, it's the kind of shame and guilt that you can have or I would probably say negative shame, where you're stuck in the past. And it's just like, well, if you could have done better, you would have. Right? I mean, if you were able to have done better, you would have.
Maybe better is not the right word, but I think I understand what you're saying. Differently. If you could have done differently, you would have. But the other thing about not being church is you can still have a respect for anyone who is in whichever church they are in, or anyone who has some kind of faith that keeps them, I'm going to say it, more wholesome. There, I said it.
Well, and it's kind of even in Irena, in her giving her experience. I mean, part of it is she doesn't trust the priests and the Orthodox people she grew up with because they were cruel, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she went in without a headscarf and
Well,
didn't greet them the proper way, and they browbeat her. And she
I
was
got
just like,
told
well,
off
this
for going
doesn't
into
seem
the
like
hat.
Christ. Huh?
I got told off for going in while wearing a hat because I'd forgotten them and to take my hat off when I go into the church. I'm just like, okay, whatever. I didn't really care. I just take my hat off. But
Hey, Liver, come in here. Yeah, I don't believe in objective reality stuff. I love C.S. Lewis. I talk about him a lot. I don't know who you are, how much experience you have here, but I would say you probably don't know me that well if you think that I'm shitting on Lewis. But you can come in, break the fourth wall, click the link, come in and talk to us. Be open. Also be humble, because that's the thing.
Don't do that.
Huh?
He's just gonna clip you. He just rage baits people, Liver. Like he
I don't know
seems
who
like a
that
nice
is.
guy, but in reality, Luke is incredibly cruel.
Mark Parker, are you ready to talk, buddy?
Yeah, no, I just want to give everybody a chance. Hey, at the risk of self-promotion for my channel, go listen to one of the best accidental randos you'll ever hear in the corner on that last live stream yesterday. It was so wonderful talking to Mark and Arena.
It was great.
And it was a good perspective. I think it's worth listening to why the mistakes Christians make, might even just call them churchgoers, people who go to church and who want their churches to grow, but then get frustrated when they don't, because it'll give us some insight in terms of the kind of ways that we screw up our outreach.
Yeah,
and
it's
so, very good there.
Georgian church is it's a very different thing, because I took a trip over there a few years ago with my priest because he loves Georgia, loves Georgian culture. He's been going there at least once a year for, I don't know, 10 years or something, or over. And
hey, Luke, you should link us up.
Oh, yeah, I'll connect you for sure. If you yeah, we've emailed before. I can email you and connect you with him somehow. But he told me, because Jason, I wear tank tops and stuff like that and shorts and things, and he told me before we went over there, he's like, because we were basically just being waterboarded with monasteries when we went over there. That's how I described it. We which was great, but after a while you're just it's like anything. You're like, okay, another monastery. But you cannot, they're not messing around over there. You don't go into a church or a monastery if you're a dude in a tank top. They're not having it. Or, with shorts. Nope. A nun might come and smack you. They're not messing around. Or even I whistle all the time. Probably ADHD or whatever, and I teeth whistle. I don't know if it's some weird. My dad did. I've always done it. And my priest was telling me too, that's a thing in monasteries. They're you don't whistle in monasteries. It's a big deal. Somebody will get pissed at you. And so it's a very different culture. It's not, and you'll find that in different American Orthodox churches too. If you go to my church, it's an OCA church. It's very chill. Most of the people are converts. They know it's a different culture, and they know there's a lot of people that are coming in, a lot of inquirers, a lot of people who don't know the things. I've had women in my church just be like, you cannot wear shorts. And then there are other people who wear shorts.
I do miss
the
the
in monasteries. That's fine.
Yeah.
And Mark D, could you drop a link in the chat
for the video?
Yeah.
For the video?
You just promoted it. Drop a link.
I'll do it.
Well, I'm in StreamYard right now, and I'm not set up for it.
I'll do it. I got it. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thanks,
Scott,
Luke. Appreciate
Scott,
it.
were you going to
I
say
see it.
something?
I just was, so I became a Christian real young, and in a lot of ways I miss the traditional kind of reverence that came with going to church. Nowadays it seems like we're going to the mall instead of the church in a lot of ways. I kind of miss it, and I tend to try to adhere to kind of the more traditional, and I come off, because I'll wear a suit when I go to church, and it ends up bringing a different persona that I don't really like. Like, they think I'm like way more successful than I am or something, which is not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to show reverence. I think of Little House on the Prairie days where they only had 2 sets of clothes, one for going to church and one for every other day of the week.
That's
I
part of
kind of
our
miss it.
problem. Yeah, that's part of our problem, right? Because you could, I mean, it's interesting and it relates to all this. It's the Freud term that I learned recently that I love is like the narcissism of small differences. When you have a lot of options, you can pick at like the tiniest things. You can have problems with the littlest tiny thing. But when you don't have any options, like you go whatever to some country where Christianity is persecuted and there are very few Christians, where it's a huge minority thing, they all go to the same church because it's the only option. And they all get along because they have no one else. They're like, you're a Christian. They don't sit there and just be like, well, what's your theory of the atonement? And if it's bad, like, get the hell out. They don't have that. They can't. They would have no.
So that's an interesting way to tie this back then. How do you think they would handle a situation like this?
Well, yeah. So that's part of, I guess that's part of my, I think people who are able to have lots of, and I think it's been this way forever, have lots of abstract conversations about ideas. You can only do that in an area of some degree of comfort. That's why in the old days when people would just be like, I'm working really hard so my kids can have better opportunities, meaning more options. They can maybe pursue music or poetry or the humanities or whatever. But like you can't, or people used to have patrons that would support them to do that because you couldn't do that. You didn't have time to do that. You were too busy feeding yourself.
Yeah, I make that. I make that argument oftentimes. Yeah, we're cursed by the abundance that we have, that we're able to sit around and talk about these things that they in the past it just never would have ever come up, just because you were so busy just trying.
Well, it's not even. It's a curse, but also, as my boy Clem Side says, to be blessed is to be cursed as well. Like, or everything is a gift if you receive it as a gift. Like, yeah, it's a curse. But then that's again where I would say, as my wife often says, change your perspective and your perspective will change. Like, is this a blessing or is it a curse? Well, both. I don't know. Like, if you can change the way you think about it, or she'll say to my kids, she's like, if you can or you can't, either way, you're right. Like that's, it's like, but I think it's true because you can have if you have the defeatist attitude where you're just like, this isn't possible. Well, it won't be, because you're dead before you even started. Alex, what do you think, my friend? Hit us with some Bible.
Well, so what he was saying about as far as when he goes into a church and then what happens when somebody else, or he also said, it seems like a concert, right? Different perspectives, different, whatever you seem to think as this is the only truth that could exist, right? According to what's running in your head, in your spirit, in your soul, in your heart. Now, I was brought with this verse in Romans. I'll give you the chapter 14, because this is actually the whole chapter. And I heard it back to back almost the exact same day. And it was hard to ignore it because it was speaking volumes. And like I said, I had to take stock, and I'm like, clearly, I've been getting this concept wrong. So I repented from that. And no matter what I do, I cannot forget that teaching. So anyways, I highly encourage you to look into that because it seems like different people are doing different things for the Lord. And Paul doesn't want us to say, oh, yes, this camp is right and this camp is wrong. On the contrary, he says they're all doing it for Christ. I'm not of Apollos, you're not of Paul,
Right.
etc. That also in Corinthians, right? But back to where Luke, where he began his monologue, and I like your Lukeisms. As far as being unequally yoked, that speaks volumes because it's not only whether in the political sense where everybody's could be, like with fervor, all into politics or religion or sports team. They're endless. But the concept behind being unequally yoked is magnanimous. I mean, it's huge, right? And it even plays out in real life. So where's the practical? Relationships are hard. Yes. Talk to any person that's been married for longer than 1 year. Marriage is work. And me and my wife, we've been a couple for over 20 years. And do I still need work? Do I still need to keep myself in check because I'm going to botch it? You bet. Relationships takes work. So being unequally yoked, are you kidding me? That's like, yeah, so that's why we have to be careful as far as who we, if we're going to invest as an example, right? There's a lot of skin in the game. Be careful who you partner up with because they're going to want to go in different directions than from you. And if you don't think that long-term wise, if you don't think that's going to have an effect on your relationship and on the investment, better ponder that, take pause and reflect and be careful because yes, both in the Old Testament and New Testament speaks of do not be unequally yoked as far as that teaching because it's profound and it will pull you in a direction you don't want to go. So, and it's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to respect other people's boundaries, but this is the most important thing for you to take stock to see, am I seeing the boundaries that are at hand from the people that I'm talking to, from the people over me, from the people under me, right? The boundaries that I'm setting. And what am I doing? Am I just, anybody can walk all over my boundaries? Is that good? Probably not. Are my boundaries too harsh where if you're perfect, as long as you're perfect, we're all good. But the minute you break any smallest thing, boom, I'm gonna bite your head off.
Right.
So again, it's really important to take these concepts. I mean, the Bible teaches it for a reason, and I think it's very prudent. And but anyways, yeah, unequally yoked and Romans 14. Wow, yeah, serious stuff. But I'll leave it at that because I'm rambling now.
No, I think that's really good. It's the big things to me are these character issues, like what you were talking about. I think of a cell wall, like there are boundaries. You do want to keep some things out, and you do want to let certain things in. And sometimes this is the danger of propositional tyranny: is you have certain narratives and ideas of what you want in and what you want out, or perhaps with your spouse, what she's wrong about and what she's right about. But the problem is like you're not always right. And so you have to have flexible, but that's where humility is important, because like you cannot propositionally and narratively wrap your hands around that in a way where, because you're going to be wrong. You're going to be wrong about some of that stuff. And so that's where humility is so important for yourself. But then also, that's what I would say, like, don't be unequally yoked to someone who's not humble. Like, why would you tie yourself to someone who can never admit that they're wrong and who doesn't repent? Like, who's never shown a consistent practice.
My wife has that problem.
Don't do that.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Look,
I mean,
what you just said
people
there
are
about
better and worse at it. Not everybody's going to be gifted in all those ways.
Look, what you just said about cell walls. I've got a whole thesis on this that would take hours to explain. But if you invite me into your house, I have to respect the rules of your house, or you kick me out. Okay, it's not rocket science. It's really simple. Just, come in, you're being an arse, go away. End of.
But Luke did say earlier about the personality aspects. There are such thing as argumentative personalities, and there are different degrees, and we all have strengths and weaknesses, and there's everybody in the corner is familiar with Jordan Peterson, and I know he once upon a time did a lecture, more than one, as far as the big factor 5 of personality, the ocean acronym, as far as openness, extroversion and all that stuff, neuroticism. And we can all be somewhere in that where we have a little bit more of this, a little bit less than that. And there are some, we will, for a fact, I can almost put money on this, that you will encounter a person that is very, very difficult. And it doesn't matter what it is, they will contradict themselves and they don't care, because all they're going to do, all they're about, it seems like, is the argument, for argument's sake. And if you say left, then it's right. And then they feel like, okay, then it's right. Then they're like, nope, it's left. And it's like, no matter, but at that point, the minute you encounter it, just remember, we all have free agency. We can choose to disengage and choose to say, well, this is not going to go anywhere, and it's only going to make me upset, so it's only going to hurt me if I try to change someone's perspective or change someone's mind. I also, I'm in the works of giving that endless task that never ends, changing other people's opinion. Yeah, I'm in the process of just letting that go. I say my piece and that's it. And whether they take it or not, that's beyond my control. And if I am encountering a very contentious person, very argumentative, the minute I recognize that, then I'd be like, who am I to change your opinion? You're entitled to your opinion. And try to find a way to change the conversation and to say, I'll see you later. And that's that. But we do have agency. We do have options. But it all begins as far as if you know what you're encountering, so it doesn't bite you.
Luke, can I ask you a question? Is Luke gone?
Yeah, I think he's gone.
All right. Go ahead.
Wait
until he's back.
I was just playing with the idea of the cell and how he said that this was his house, and tying that back to who it was, Santori's 2-day talk about the universal Unitarianism and the arenas, which I'm just so fascinated how there's been this thread over the last several weeks that just keeps kind of popping up and showing up at all the different levels of the stack. And I think that may be a differentiating factor here, is that this arena is known. We all trust the walls. We trust the rules within this arena. And that's what's making it maybe difficult to move it up the stack to the more broader question that's been wrestled around over the last 3 weeks.
Well, David, you just jumped on. I guess I'll, while Luke is back, I'll say, is there anything on your mind or something that you want to?
Yeah, I was thinking about the idea of what we're actually talking about versus what we're saying. I see a huge distinction in that. And I'm okay with a lot of small talk. I like politics. I like a lot of different things. Like, I started doing this, but I started realizing, for instance, that a lot of political engagement is unrelated to politics at all. So I had this friend, they were posting a lot of really inflammatory political stuff online. And then I just came up with a conspiracy theory where for no reason I just said, I bet this is actually about something completely else. And I just called him and said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he's just like, "Oh, not well." And I just started doing that repeatedly, that whenever people would be posting politically, I just assumed that wasn't actually what they were interested in. Right? Like, and then trying to figure out what people are actually getting at, which is upsetting to me, because I find economics interesting, right? I do want to have those conversations. I want to talk about things. The only issue is I don't want to not talk about things. Does that make sense? I feel that's what Luke is getting at. You want to actually talk about politics. You don't want to not talk about politics. Is that right? Or do you just not care about politics?
No, I mean, well, no. I think I care about the things that are underneath politics and behind politics, that people are talking about politics as a mechanism to fix, like human flourishing, human well-being. Like, who doesn't care about those things? I'm just not, and I'm interested. I mean, like, what subject am I not interested in? I'm interested in almost like any subject. I think everything's interesting. But yes, kind of to your point, I don't want to talk. I think that's back to that jouissance thing. I think that most political discussion is really coming out of a place of, in a very Peter Rollins way, fear and insecurity and doubt. And it's a, I don't even know what the word is. Like, it's a, I mean, to say it more simply, I think it's really about other things most of the time. But then I struggle with that. Like, you're giving an illustration of someone who's your friend, who you know more personally, who you can just directly have that conversation with. I don't want to go around, especially online, psychoanalyzing people and saying, like, you're just talking about politics because of.
I really recommend it, though. I think I recommend it so hard. There's very few things I recommend as heartily as that. But also, like,
You think it would be received?
What?
You think it would be received well to say, like, I don't think you really want to talk about politics?
So specifically, I think people are giving you psychological information. I think people are snitches on themselves all the time. It's
For
just
sure.
no one's paying attention.
Yeah, for sure.
And like, I've had this conversation with my wife so many times, especially for people that put up fronts. I'm like, do they really think this is effective? Just like, yeah, because most people are much more polite than you, Dave. Right? Like,
I do want to. Sorry, David. I do want to say
ahead.
this. I have a meeting at 10, and I'm looking at the clock here.
Yep.
So I want to say this. One thing that, now this is my opinion, I could be wrong. One thing, when people in my circles, when they start talking about politics, it's usually because they think whatever the perception of what normal is broken, and they want things to be better. And they seem to think that a certain camp, politicians, a certain camp, they have the ability to fix it, right? This is broken, they can fix it. Now, I want to emphasize the word they can fix it, right? There's something broken, they can fix it. And they're very, they think that by promoting the person or the entity or the group or the camp, that they can fix it. But I want to say this before I go. It's easy, as in Romans, the beginning of Romans, I think it's maybe chapter 1, chapter 2, where it says that we will end up worshiping the creature instead of the creator. And we are not the creator, so people are creatures. And before you know it, we have an icon that they will fix my life. They will make it better. They. And before you know it, we're worshiping them, and we're changing our lives, and we're evangelizing everybody to this camp, to the extreme, to where we're so fervent that if you endorse the other political team, you're now my enemy. To that extreme, because remember, they can bring change into the world. So I'll leave it at that. That's my opinion. I could be wrong as far as maybe that's why people are so head over heels over politics, because they are, and maybe from their perspective, the world is broken and they can fix it. And I say, God is the God of miracles. He's a big God. And if anything's broken, he can fix it. And he can start with me. I'm very broken. I'm very flawed. I'm not perfect. And he can start with me. And hopefully he can help me fix my brokenness and make me better. Maybe change can begin with me. And anyways, great talking to you guys. I wish I could stay longer and listen to you guys, but I gotta run. I don't want to be late for my work meeting.
Yeah, Alex. Thanks for coming.
I have a Jack Handy, as Alex goes. I have a Jack Handy quote. Do you remember Jack Handy?
I love Jack Handy.
Okay, so deep
So much.
thought, which is, I feel that it relates to our conversations about politics. Sometimes I sit back and I picture a world without war, without weapons, without hatred whatsoever. And then I like to picture us attacking that world because they wouldn't even see it coming.
Jack Handy is so amazing. Oh, he's so
But
good.
I do like, okay, I did just make a joke, but I think that's about something. I think that's about,
For sure.
that's what we like. I like to sit back and picture a world without war, without weapons, without hatred whatsoever. And then I like to picture us attacking that world. They wouldn't even see it coming.
Can I pitch something at you, Luke, and all you guys? I'm curious.
Yeah.
Cool.
After Nathan's thing yesterday, I didn't see it, and I wasn't aware of it until I started getting peppered with questions about it because Nathan appears on my channel a lot. And I got to kind of, these are private texts, so I'm not going to name names, but
you cut out.
He was taken out for being a snitch.
He was about to just give Nathan's personal
Yeah.
phone number.
He's about to be a snitch. We should have seen like a red dot on his forehead right before he went out. That would have been amazing.
The progressives are turning on themselves.
That is what they do. Yes, correct. Oh, sorry. I'm not supposed to talk politics. Sorry, I'm not supposed to talk politics.
We had the Tea Party at one time, guys.
Yeah. Oh, are you back, Mark? You're back?
Did you lose me? Did you lose me? Okay, so
Yeah.
apparently I can't read the thing and step out of StreamYard. So okay, I'll just try to recount it for you as best I can.
Okay.
Basically, I was getting peppered with questions, and then he said, it's like, so I just stopped it. I said, just stop. I'm not going to respond until you're done raging at me. And then ultimately I replied by saying, when everything stopped, when I had time to deal with it, I said, you're implying that I'm a liar and then asking me if I'm lying. Well, that's a real trap. That's just a trap. That just strikes me as a snare to catch me in my words. And then, because the idea was Nathan has an agenda. And am I aware of Nathan's agenda and all that sort of thing? And I'm not perfectly aware with what Nathan's agenda is. And of course, then do you align yourself with Nathan's agenda? Well, even if I understood Nathan's agenda perfectly, no, because I don't align with anybody's agenda perfectly. And if you want to understand my agenda, you've got 150 videos on my channel. Find it out for yourself. And then it's like, yeah, it seems like Nathan has diagnosed MAGA and English nationalism as a kind of social contagion. And he is responding from his perspective in that with language that he thinks could be helpful in creating dialogue. Well, of course, MAGA and English nationalists are reacting negatively to that. But it's no different than what conservative Christians have been doing in terms of diagnosing trans people and progressivism wokeism and as diagnosing it as a kind of social contagion, and having their own prescriptions to try to convert the left.
But those things are different, though. Like,
but everybody's they're different, but they're both being treated as contagions that need to be addressed because
Like
they're quote dangerous to the body politic and the society.
Yeah, I think there is some sort of a difference. Like because I do think, for instance, someone just mentioned the Tea Party. There's an overlap between the Tea Party and left-wing movements as well. There's a ton of people that voted for Trump, and before Trump, they voted for Bernie Sanders, right? Those are right. similar people. There's a difference in social contagion if we're talking about things like, if you just follow any of the CAS reports, like trans folk who overlap with body dysmorphia of other kinds as well. Your anorexia, your cutting, your all this other stuff. That, I think, is a different thing. There is something to be said about people who are politically activated, and they would be politically activated by anyone, right? They'd become libertarians, they would become anarchists, they would become communists, right? And even like being downtown Toronto, knowing activisty types, there were even jokes about it, right? That a libertarian was an old communist, that like, you know, he was trying communism for a while. He couldn't get everyone to agree. So he just went, okay, we all should be allowed to do whatever we want and no one can make anyone do anything. Right. And like what relationship those places have. And that it's almost like accidental which stage you're on because the personality is already of such to be open to multiple. There is questions that I would have about different eras attracting the healthiest people. I definitely have thoughts about that.
I'm just wondering if I understand what you're saying, David. I think there are healthy ways to engage with all of these subjects.
Right.
But then there's the satanic panic syndrome, right? And like you guys are probably all too young to remember the satanic panic.
No. I remember. It was all a conspiracy. There has never been powerful people abusing children, especially not on an island. That is a conspiracy.
It was a nursing home. We're talking about, remember, not nursing home. What was it? What was nurseries? What was child?
It was daycare.
Primary care, daycares. Thank you. And it was a whole panic around that. And I think that's the frame. If I were to try to translate for you what Nathan is saying in a way that I wouldn't say it, what I think he's saying is it's something akin to that. What he sees happening in MAGA, for him, it's from afar, or what he sees in the radical English nationalism of late that's becoming more mainstream now. He sees that as a kind of social hysteria. And I would agree with that diagnosis to a degree, but I can flip that around and say that a lot of people on the left are engaged in the same kind of hysteria when they think that Christians becoming public with conservative Christians becoming public with their opinions and participating in politics is bad for trans people. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. I mean, some people feel like it's on the verge of a kind of genocidal move, and I think
so. This is part
that's
of the
hysteria too.
Why I was talking before about what kind of the person who will get into politics, and it doesn't matter what kind of politics. I do think that there's an important conversation to be had about that, because we do have demographics on, for instance, what the hard right looks like, and it's important to know what we're actually talking about, which is different than what people think we're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. Like I live in Ontario, and in Ontario, the largest group of people that did not get vaccinated were of Pakistani descent, right? They were brown folk who had dealt with who had dealt with any immigrant community, really, especially if they dealt with a totalitarian state, were not cool with anything, right? And it was really important that we, in our minds, did not conceive of the conspiracy theorist as a reasonable, rational person. It was important that we made him white and privileged, and that there was no reason why he would feel the way that he felt, right? Because we didn't want to actually contend with the argument. We just wanted to dismiss the individual. Whereas if we dealt with the fact that people of color were less likely, like think about it. An anti-vaxxer, white or black in your mind, you would immediately say white. Well, black people were far less likely to get vaccinated, right? Like it's just your brain comprehends the kind of person that was against that movement as a particular individual. So taking that and going like a little bit deeper, the people who have gotten really, really into, for instance, white nationalism and the weird MAGA stuff, they are people who are not involved in their church. Like we just assume it was like the evangelical Bible.
Right.
It was actually the people who did not have communities who found it within here. That's part of what I mean about, okay, let's figure out the demographics that we're actually talking about, not what we think we're talking about. Because you might say overrepresentation of like white Christians in the conservative movement. Okay, fine. But the hard right people that we're upset about actually aren't those evangelicals. That's an entirely different group, which is also, for instance, it's not white even, like you think black Christians were totally cool with the trans stuff and the LGBTQ stuff. Is it like they're really on the left wing, but are they like, what do they think about this, right? How are we actually formulating the people that have these opinions?
All right. Want to welcome the person we've been just shit talking for 2 hours.
Did you bring your raincoat? The deluge of shit.
I figured you'd be aware of it. Like, here's the thing. I wouldn't talk about you behind your back if I thought you were like never going to see it or something. I figured you'd be made aware or whatever.
Well,
but
I spent my whole morning picking up dog shit, so from my car.
Well, and he did start by talking shit about us behind our backs.
So then I'm
teasing you, Nathan.
This is the thing that I would say. So you say, I mean, I know you said this kind of in jest, or I'm assuming you did, but to reiterate my point and to try to summarize my general thing is, and to quote Rob Bell, the great Rob Bell, I'm trying to usually pay attention to the thing behind the thing behind the thing, which is the spirit or the pattern behind the appearances, the superficial thing. And so like the way I would say it is like St. Paul in 1 Timothy says, the law is just if you use it lawfully. So like, can you use the law in a way that is subterfuge to the spirit of the law, the point of the law? Absolutely. That's what Jesus was yelling at the Pharisees about all the time. You tithe mint and cumin, and you're twice the sons of Satan. And so you can use data if you use it datafully, lovingly, if you use it the right way. I mean, it's like...
Have we considered the possibility that Jesus said that because he was anti-Semitic?
There you go. I had not considered that. But Ryan Gosling has a great movie called Believer where he plays Jewish neo-Nazi.
Speaking of people from Ontario.
He's the best. I'm such a Goss fan. We could talk about that. Okay, Nathan, sorry, you can talk.
Sorry, I mean, I don't disagree that people can use data incorrectly. I think I'm expressing the same view as I have sort of throughout, right? It just seems like the criteria that you gave for when you would want to dismiss data there were very like underspecified. And what that allows you to do is sort of be quite unprincipled in your application of the idea that sometimes the data aren't good to appeal to and sometimes they are. And I suspect that there's a little bit too much of like it being skepticism about the data when it goes against a conclusion that's not liked, but then liking data when it goes for a conclusion that's liked, right? And that's the issue. The point in appealing to data is that we're supposed to have kind of methodological principles that we apply, and then so we might have skepticism about data if those methodological criteria aren't met, if bad types of analyses are done, all those sorts of things. But those things are pretty neutral, and everyone should agree on them, regardless of what their conclusions are. The other thing of going, this data would show me a conclusion I don't like, is really just special pleading. It's a way to trap yourself in any belief system.
Yeah, I mean, confirmation bias, right?
I'm sorry. Are we in a time? This is a real question. I don't know. Are we in a time where we can take anything for granted between us? Like, I assume you speak English because you spoke English. That's basically. But your priors, I don't assume anything now. I don't think I do. That you haven't already said. And I don't mean to be uncharitable. What I mean is, we live in a time where I don't know what anyone's foundations are.
Yeah, I genuinely have no idea. There's a charitable reading of what you just said, which is sort of like a poetic expression of acknowledging the amount of division that there is.
Yeah.
But in sort of the more literal sense, I think the other thing that you said, like that, obviously I speak English because we're speaking English, right? Like those sorts of things. I mean, it seems like you maybe answered your own question there. Like, yes, we can assume that because we're speaking English. I don't really know how else. I mean,
yeah. Sorry, I thought you were making a political an appeal within politics to things that are agreed upon. But I think we have such minimal things that are agreed upon. I'm not sure how moving forward is possible.
Maybe there is a point there, yeah, because I do think that the acceptance of rational norms is a political commitment, and even acceptance of a broad, the scientific method is a very democratic thing, and so various authoritarian and totalizing political regimes and views have always had issues with those methods. The Stalinists had issues with science and scientists in the same way that the fascists did. They ended up needing to dismiss data. They came up with their own versions of science. I mean, even criteria like autism were created for people that were as a product of the fact that it was very hard to socialize certain people into the Nazi regime. So lots of politics and science, they're not completely disconnected, but within a broad kind of set of values that I think people should accept. So maybe we could debate the values if people reject them. I think there should be this kind of idea of trying to have these neutral methods that we can appeal to adjudicate between us on cases where the data can decide it.
Okay, I really don't want to be facetious. Is there, like, when you're talking about neutral methods, that's exactly what I think is up for grabs. Is that, like,
in an absolute sense, yeah, I would say in an absolute sense, nothing is, nothing is true.
Like, if we're in the middle of a replication crisis, and that's worse for all social science stuff, then it becomes extremely difficult to make declarations about just about anything, right? Like, we use data. And like, yes, we're trying to figure out good data, but it's interesting because a lot of the things that have good data are debated fiercely, while the things that have bad data are considered much more solid.
There's quite a lot to that, right? Sorry, Scott. I know you might have a point. If I just is like, so I'm someone who I really like what I call the methodological crisis in the social sciences, but also in, I think the soft and hard sciences thing is a myth, and that some of these features are, they're prevalent in all the sciences, and people just haven't really seen how bad the effects are in some of the other disciplines. There's some data to indicate this as well. The point is that despite thinking that there are real problems there, and there have been problems with how a lot of these sciences have been practiced, all that does is it sharpens the edge of the sword, right? Because it means that what my interest has been for a few years now has been in really deeply understanding the history behind these statistical methods, the history behind the theoretical paradigms, in order to understand what has gone wrong to get us in the state we're in. So that means that when I now think that there's an effect, or someone makes a statistical claim, I have a lot of different ways of interpreting what the limitations of that statistical claim are, and where are they theorizing about their measures versus neutrally reporting their measures. This is one of the big problems, is that people often don't neutrally report what their measurement was, and so they introduce some kind of theoretical claim in the measure, and then they kind of like end up with the data shows, you know, this is different from that in their theory, but that's not actually what they measured, right? They measured something like, you know, the data shows that people report this and this,
Right.
which is a different type of claim. So the point is that I think, and this is what I was trying to describe to Luke, there's kind of like a range of things, and if there are good principles, it's the in principle fact of fallibility isn't enough to get us to a place of kind of global skepticism about the data. What it does is it means that we can't be absolutely confident, and we should always be in this hermeneutic position of questioning ourselves and saying, am I really certain? Do I want to revisit that? But if we're going to question something, we should have good reasons to do so, and we should be able to articulate those reasons. And if we're going to believe something, we should be able to articulate why we think it's good and why it meets, you know, good methodological criteria too.
But Nathan, if you want to talk to me more about this publicly or privately, that's fine. But we're trying to win hearts, not just minds. And I really think it's problematic when we essentially medicalize politics, and half the population in the United States, I just don't see it as, I see us winning the hearts of the people when we basically say half the country is mentally ill or something. Even if you're right, it's not persuasive. And politics, real politics. I'm just going to say, real politics is art as much as science. So go ahead.
Well, if you assume that I'm right, though, in saying that, I mean, presumably you might.
I said think, even if. I don't concede the point. I'm just saying even if.
But I'm saying if you imagine in the case of, say, a psychiatrist or a psychologist, right? If they're dealing with a patient who's got some psychiatric disorder, well, they're not going to intervene where they say dialogically, where they tell the person, oh, you're being like depressed and this is really pathological right now. Instead, they're going to intervene in a way where they they train the person to have certain types of behaviors that might reason about their thoughts and feelings slightly differently. But that doesn't mean that they will never talk in that way, right? They will sometimes talk in that way because they're theorizing and trying to understand what's going on. I mean, Jordan Peterson did the same thing with Nazi society and communism. He had a whole module where he talked about collective psychopathologies of societies that became totalitarian, right? And I think that there is a space for speaking in that way.
But there was a time when psychiatry and psychology were weaponized against gay people and trans people.
And that's why would never make a claim where I'm like, no one can object to me or give me reasons why I might be wrong, right? I wouldn't hold it like I hold dogma. I could be wrong in my beliefs, and I think I can justify my beliefs. And this is why I think reason has this really important role, because it limits our certainty and how confident we would be to act on behalf of beliefs that could be wrong or could be really harmfully wrong.
Okay, I want to see, someone made a comment that he said he thinks what's going on is exactly what David was talking about. So I want to see what David thinks about that. Also, per what I was saying earlier on in the stream, and Tayo was saying something like Nathan's ability to hijack a stream is unbelievable. So like, because that really is it. So like, where you came on stream and we're talking about this is kind of like what I was saying at one point to our good friend T-Grog, like when he comes on stream. He has certain things he wants to talk about, and that's all he ever talks about. And he will not talk about anything else. And, you know, whatever. That's his right. But then that's kind of the point of my thing is like, what should you do when people won't get on board? So like if I say on my stream, I don't want to talk about this with you every time you get on stream. and like you think I don't understand you and I'm just wrong and I'm suppressing things out of confirmation bias, etc. If I just don't agree and I don't want to talk about it, what do we do?
So when you previously said that you were talking about me in this stream for a long time before this,
Yeah.
so then if I come in, I'm hijacking it. That seems a bit like an unreasonable.
No. That I'm taking that as totally disingenuous. I was using you as an illustration. I was using you as an illustration because we were talking about politics earlier. See, those are the kind of rhetorical moves I don't want to have.
It's not rhetorical. It's pointing out an inconsistency in your values and behaviors.
I know you see it that way.
Okay, let me. Can I intercede for 1 second? Okay,
Yep.
And I don't mean this as any kind of an insult whatsoever. Nathan, I like you so far. I think you're fun. I do. Do you have any reason to believe that I have any idea who you are? I was interacting with Luke for fun, because of the ideas that he was getting out of interactions with you, not because I have no idea who you are. I have no idea what your background is. I have no idea what your religious background is, what you think of Peter. I have no clue. I came on not to fight you or anything like that. I find some of the ideas fun to play with. I came to play with Luke. That's really why I came. I show up and I do that. I have not come to win hearts and minds, as Mark was saying. I don't think that's a thing we actually can do. I think we can play with our friends. That's like the best I could do. So did I just scare Mark off by mentioning him?
No, he probably had to go for some reason.
Yeah. Luke is deeply reactive to situations. And I honestly think not to take things personally is good, because it's going to put him in a particular place that means something specific to him, and why he wants to do a stream about it is very separate from you.
Yeah. Look, I'm not saying you can't do a stream about it or talk about it. I'm just saying that if I didn't come in and hijack the stream. I was asked questions and gave answers to them, and was told that the stream, the previous hour or whatever of it, had heavily been about me. And so the accusation that I'm like hijacking the stream or something just seems to be quite off.
No, and I agree. I don't like Tayo's framing of that. I mean, I think I know what he's getting at, but that's that's inflammatory language. It's not helpful to anyone, really.
I appreciate that. Like, I'm happy to not talk very much as well. Like, it doesn't have to be about me or anything. It's just I felt.
I think I think that's good. You do that all the time on House of Woo. I think everybody has their kind of pet talking points and subjects that they like talking about, but I really do think that's just what I would lay out there in my stream. There's a certain culture in broad TLC, I would say, although there's a flotilla and there's different variations on it. But I think what David just said, and that's my goal. Like, if you want to say what I'm doing, I'm trying to play with my friends in relational ways. Very often we'll talk about ideas, but hopefully in a way that shows a lot of humility and openness, while at the same time holding to convictions. It's not but particularly, like, I will say that, like, I think I hate the culture war. I grew up in it. I hate it. And honestly, often when I talk to you about subjects and data and information, it feels exactly like my childhood, but just with different values. It feels like a very smart guy, much more educated than my parents, talking about stuff where they're essentially trying to colonize the world. And I think it's motivated by good intentions, but I hate it.
Would you say that you are triggered? Like, and I don't even mean that in like a negative way, to be like, look, I completely accept that other people should talk about this. I should not, though.
Yeah, I don't think it's well, and truthfully, I don't think it's particularly good for me. It's one of the big reasons I had to leave the Protestant evangelical church, is because I struggled so much with emotional dysregulation that it carried over into that's why I did it. That's what my wife said to me. She said, like, at one point, it was her idea for us to leave the church, because she's like, I can't have you upset and in a bad mood in like every aspect of our life because you don't like your inability to have meaningful religious conversations at church. And so I had to leave. And so like I can't, and that's what I mean about my own personal boundaries. Like if someone comes on stream,
and that you're
Yeah.
asserting that other people should do what you did, because what you're saying is what you were saying before is like, if you don't like the game, then maybe you should pick up and leave. You stating that is actually coming from someone who has showed up to places and said, they are not playing the game I want. I'm going to pick up and leave.
well, I mean, I think you have, like, right, I think you have to at some point. Like you either have to agree on an explicit goal, or you have to have a shared, assumed, tacit goal that's the same, or else you have to separate. Like I don't see another option, really. What did he say?
If I had been his pastor, Luke would still be a Protestant.
It's probably true.
Yeah.
Honestly. Paul, what's up?
So going back to like sort of full circle on this, I've been saying this in the comments, but whatever. Well, I'll say it aloud. National politics, we have no agency in national politics. And so it's a fool's game at its heart. And I mean that as it's an area of deception where we think we have something to say and we can influence people and we can change the world. And that's sort of the promise of it. Like your vote matters. Your vote is one in a couple 100 million. And you're not really changing anything. And having these discussions, like I changed my dad's vote on something. You know what? Now my vote's worth 2 in 150 million or something. And who cares? And so at some level, the response to all this Christian nationalism and this is Christian localism. The things we have agency in are the local relationships, these groups of this size, you can go to your neighborhood board and actually be heard and talk to the people making decisions about your parks and your schools. And those are things you can actually do. But the only way you do them is relationally. You show up time and time again, and you build a relationship with the people making local decisions. So at the time, I think the rational argument should be, I don't love the rational thing, but the rational argument is we shouldn't even engage in these conversations. We should be focused on the conversations where we do have leverage and agency. And so the distraction is just full. We're doing something that acts against rationality. It acts against relationality when we're entering these political debates. So the issue, I guess, what I pitch is that the issue is not the Christian nationalism. It's the nationalism and the Christian nationalism. And I hopefully didn't derail there, but
Nathan,
that's where I see it for.
I think I agree with a lot of what Paul was saying. I think that my explanation would just be a little bit of a difference on it, which would be, rather than me seeing what he's describing as being the product of talking about Christian nationalism, I think it's more the product of the mass communication platforms that we use, which incentivize extremist topics. And actually, even there's a whole bunch of metaphors in the space as well, such as the marketplace of ideas and having the debate, that there's even a historic legal precedent for. These were literally used by very intelligent lawyers, the idea of the marketplace of ideas, to win cases historically. And all of that has been turned into this kind of verbal performance and podcasting ecosystem where people spend a lot of time doing this stuff, and there's celebrities who go around and talk about things, but that doesn't change people's minds. I think that just leads to a lot of polarization. So I completely agree that it's the local and different types of conversations where people can change minds. I still think there's a role for talking about and understanding these things, though, because the dynamics are different. So rather than the dynamics being those of like clash of worldviews, debate, blood sports, and all that, in a different space where there's a role for empathy, and there's not like a loss of faith if you change your mind or if you express an understanding or don't outsmart your opponent's view, then there's a good space to actually understand how you're. Not that everything should be focused on those conversations at the national level or whatever, but I think people should still understand how they relate to them, and there's some space for that, and it's a much healthier space outside of the online blood sports kind of thing. Is my view.
Is there? I'm just wondering about maybe a slightly opposite bit where you do get rewarded for switching. You said there isn't a reward for switching worldviews, but like, would anyone care about Dave Rubin if he had such mushy views and had not switched? Like his whole shtick is not that he's an advanced thinker, but that he changed his mind on something. Like I honestly, like, I don't even think he's interesting. I think
I agree. This is called. Yeah, there's a narrative device called the avowal of prior skepticism, and it's a common feature in like UFO cults, in high control religious communities, all these sorts of things where people are like, listen, a lot of times it's pull out a convert, bring forward a convert, they'll prove that we were right all along, right?
Yeah, orthodoxy, duh.
I think the point though is that it's not in the debate moment where someone would ever do it. That, you know, people might change their mind for all sorts of reasons, rational, irrational, whatever, right? And if they do that, they get a story of, I was the biggest other sider and now I'm this side, so credibility. Whereas, well, or at least rational credibility or something. Whereas I think that in the context of a debate, you're not going to get someone go, God, I was stupid, I've changed my mind. Like, you'll never see that, because people will be like, oh, no, you're completely, you know, like, people have to put on the front, even if they know they're wrong about things in that context. They might change their mind later.
That'd be amazing. If someone was just like, I was very sexually frustrated during the debate, and that's actually why I said what I said. Like, I just want someone to say that one time. That'd be incredible.
Totally. I mean, but part of that to me is the pattern of humility. Like, if somebody says that and vulnerability and transparency, then I trust you. Like, throw facts at me all day. Like, I'm just, fuck, I don't care. Like, there's nothing that makes me want to care about them. So all right, we got about 8 minutes to close. And I think a lot of this has been very good. I appreciate it. I would like to, even to your point, Nathan, like, I can't remember where it was. It was something, I was reading comments in some stream. Something happened recently where I was reacting to these comments, and I was thinking, like, I didn't know how to take it, and they were making me slightly uncomfortable. And then I realized, and then I connected, it was like I connected the avatar and their handle to a person that I knew, and like, it totally changed. You know? How it works.
It was like an Eyes Wide Shut party and someone took the mask off. That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Closing thoughts, people. Let's do it.
I mean, that contextualized knowing is really key. So I agree with you, Luke. Like, that takes time, though.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to go to your key points, like, there's a relationality that's built up that allows you to then have the deeper conversation. And part of the relationality is not talking about the thing. Like, I should talk about my wife and kids at some point. And that would deepen the relationality. But if I'm always pounding on economics or whatever, it's going to make me one-dimensional.
Yeah,
anyway,
and that's the difference with TLC. I mean, that's like that's the first, I brought that up. That's like one of my first interactions with Nathan, is I said, it's not about, it's deeper than ideas, man. Do you remember that, Nathan? And because it's about, the TLC has always been about people and making friendships, and now we're just being really explicit about it. You know?
I think what my concern always has been with this space is that some of those, so that you can be relational without giving people sort of like catchphrases that serve a structure in their thinking, if that makes sense. So you know, you can just kind of talk to someone and be like, how are you feeling, what's going on in your life, all those sorts of things. But the moment that in-group language comes into it, there's strange, like special in-group language that marks people who are in the group community or out of the community. There's sort of like these weird sociological dynamics that can kick in that kind of circumstance.
Is that good?
Not necessarily, it could be either, right? But I think what makes it questionable or bad in this circumstance is that you have a lot of people who are sort of deconstructing maybe religious worldviews that might have been harmful, and combined with a propensity for people to have been going down a kind of politically valenced rabbit hole of content and things. And so people end up then where they need to be thinking clearly about what they think of all that stuff and how they piece back together their worldview with sort of these thought-terminating cliches or permission structures for things that might not make as much sense or could be harmful in certain ways. And then they end up like trapped with those views. But all of the...
Sorry to interrupt. Your concern is wrong thinking.
Well, that's a way of describing it. But you could say, there's a way that the Nazis could do the same thing, right? They could say, oh, you're concerned with Nazi ideology, you just care about wrong think, right? If you were to describe the perverse sociological mechanisms that kept people in that worldview. So my concern is when people have communities of belief and those beliefs deviate from a collection of values I think people should hold to, and people don't have the tools to see that and deconstruct it, that's when I start to get worried about what's going on. And those are the points I push on in this space where I'm worried about those things.
Yeah, I guess we're in closing thoughts. I shouldn't talk too much, but I interrupted you twice.
We'll have to fix it all
at some level. Yeah, no, there's wrong thinking. At some level, it's like we need to think about wrong thinking at some point. And are we accepting of wrong thinking or not?
It's a great question. Yeah, it is a great question. Also, Nathan. Jason is horny. Nathan is not horny. Scott, David.
I blame myself for all the horny talk. Why did I do that?
Never blame yourself for that.
So what I've gotten from TLC is watching people struggle and try to find the way forward. And it has helped me. So I am in a lot of social interactions, and I would argue that many of these social interactions are extraordinarily high stress. Decisions need to be made, and you have to both be able to share very precise facts in an extraordinarily highly emotional situation. And what I get from watching you guys play over the years is it helps me do that better. So, and I want to use that personal experience to offer pushback against your fears, Nathan. That I don't think that if to the extent that your concerns are valid, I don't think they make it all the way to the top of the what we should be doing, and or having to change the way things are done. I think that does that, and I would like to leave that as my final word.
Thanks, Scott. Who else? I don't know who's Paul and Nathan. I don't know if you gave final words. You can give another short one if you want to. David, you have it.
I haven't given final words. Okay, I have a proposal. Number one, when you come on, you know how it says like what organization you come from underneath your name? What if it said your marital status? So this is going back to what I said before. Your marital status and some sort of number connected to like a period tracker app. So that you might know about the general environment that such a person is going through at the time. How about this as another thing for the TLC? Would this be helpful?
We're on
if
day
we're married
45
or if we're on our period.
Yeah. If it's just like, I know the way that Luke seems right now, but you have to realize that his wife's on day 14. So I don't even know what this means.
I mean, yeah, we could have our own special kind of like TLC social credit score.
I need people to understand that I come here for fun. I do. And I'm having serious conversations, but also I am trying to see, I consider this a form of play. And this can be rough play. And so I'm joking, but then I'm also, I don't know if I'm joking. Like I have advised couples who have like are recently married and they're like, what advice do you give? And I would say, get a period tracker app. Because that's so it's like immediate advice that I have, and not because they're Catholic or something like that. It's like there's aspects of what is affecting human beings that we just don't want to consider. We want to like neutralize human beings.
Days since gotten laid.
Yes. Be interesting. And then a quality thing too. It's just like, it was 2 days, but it was awful. It was just terrible.
Paul gets it. He beat me to it. Yeah. Jason, I mean, I think, listen, this is how open we are in this corner. I think he's a dude and he has a period tracker app. You know, whatever.
That is transphobic. You're glad that Mark Parker is gone.
Yeah.
At this point.
All right. Anybody else have anything they want that just has to get off their chest? I love watching Nathan when he's just like clearly in respond to text mode.
What's the worst insult of me that I should go back and watch?
I don't think there was ever. I mean,
I certainly wasn't insulting you because I don't know who you are.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm much
when
more.
I go back and you're the worst one. You're like that guy. He gets no pussy. Does it?
Yeah.
if you, I would love to know if you go back and watch if you thought at all I was insulting or rude, because I don't think I was.
I'll see. I mean, I think you were joking. Maybe you were just joking about it when I came in. I mean, I don't know what you guys were saying.
No, I was using you as an illustration.
Yeah,
you know.
I don't know. I didn't hear major insults. I do kind of want almost like a. Remember how when Facebook first existed, it was just like, oh, this is the religious perspective, this is their relationship status, everything like that. I'd like to know all the hot button issues that way we could psychologize everyone, just to be like, this person is single, they're without a job, they like cats, not dogs, their father was overly expressive, their mother was not at all. I want all that stuff. Their parents believed in spanking.
I love that stuff. That stuff is huge. That's PVK and the randos. That's why the randos is the heart of the TLC. All right. I gave myself the last word. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. David Bustill is MJ. We're ending the stream. That's it.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
You don't get to know. You don't